Hi, I'm Jeff Ascoff. Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about an Instagram post which I saw earlier on. In this Instagram post, Sarah had been tagged and one of her photographs had been referenced, and the gist of the post was basically a photographer was shooting on a beach and he was having a hard time getting any photographs. He was clearly uncomfortable with the situation, and I'm assuming mainly because people on beaches don't wear a lot of clothes, and there's kids running around with not a lot of clothes on and this kind of thing. But with regard to the photograph which he referenced, which is this one, he actually said that Sarah has an advantage when it comes to this type of photograph because she's a female photographer. And my question today is that actually true? Now, having worked with Sarah for over 10 years now and having spent many thousands of hours with her on the street, I can tell you that her success as a photographer is down to a number of things. The first is that she's absolutely fearless. I mean, absolutely fearless. Getting the photograph is the most important thing to Sarah, and often I've seen her put herself in positions where she's only got a small window of opportunity to take a photograph before things might get a little bit grumpy, a little bit tetchy. But she's also very good at reading the situation. She will always avoid problematic situations, or if a photograph has any sort of potential, then she will try and break down any barriers before she actually starts photographing. But most importantly, she also knows when to walk away if things start to change. And very often we'll be on the street and she'll suddenly move me along and say, come on, we're not going to stay here much longer. Things are starting to get a little bit tetchy or whatever. She's very good at reading that kind of situation. She's also very, very fast when she's shooting. And a lot of times the people in the photographs aren't even aware they've had their picture taken. And by the time they're aware of her presence, it's too late. She's taken the photograph and she's basically ready to have a chat with them if that's what they want to do, So this speed is something that she's worked on over the years, and it allows her almost to hide in plain sight. Don't forget, she's not standing on the other side of the road with a 200mm lens. She's using a 28mm, and she's usually 6 to 12 feet away from her subjects. But her body language is always open. It's always relaxed. It's never threatening. And like I say, she doesn't try to hide. She's there. She's in plain sight, effectively. The speed allows her to be able to do that, and it allows her to get the photographs without people actually noticing. And if people do start to ask her what she's doing, if the situation does get a little bit tetchy, then she'll just calm the situation down. She'll hand out some business cards, tell them what she's doing. And for me, honestly, her personality is probably her biggest asset when it comes to shooting. But none of these things which make her such a good photographer have anything to do with her gender. And in fact, a few years ago, I was out with another photographer. I spent a week with another photographer shooting on the streets who had pretty much the same set of skills. This ability to, read a situation, this ability to calm a situation down, to chat to people, this ability to shoot quickly and diffuse a situation if there was a problem. And that was Sir Don McCullen. And obviously, he's a bloke. Now, going back to this photograph and the question of whether Sarah was only able to take it because she's a girl, and I'm assuming that kind of statement was made because the picture shows girls in bikinis, well, actually one's just in her underwear, and a bloke with no top on. I guess the inference is that the girls are less worried about Sarah being there taking their photograph than they would be if it was a guy. Now, I watched Sarah follow this group of kids around, and there was quite a few of them. And what the kids were doing, they were running along a kind of a short pier. They were jumping into the sea, swimming back to shore, and doing kind of like this circle. It was making the local lifeguards pretty irate, and that just seemed to make the kids even worse. And Sarah followed them from out the sea round to the pier and back round again, and she was with them for maybe 15 minutes, and she never spoke to them, but her body language again was confident. It was relaxed though. It was also very chilled, but it was very confident. And honestly, the kids didn't seem to care. Now, the question is that because she's a female? Could I have taken the same photograph? I mean, at the end of the day, I was there with her. Could I have taken the photograph that Sarah took ultimately in the end? And the answer to that is a definite no. And that's nothing to do with my gender. That's to do with my abilities as a photographer and the difference in talent between myself and my wife. I don't have her level of talent. I work in a completely different way because I have to work to my strengths. But ultimately, I wouldn't have been able to take that photograph because I'm just not talented enough to do that. The argument that female photographers have an advantage in these sort of situations is largely an argument that's brought about by male photographers who don't have the confidence or just aren't comfortable being in this kind of situation. People always say that, you know, she has an advantage because she's a girl. She doesn't. In some respects, she doesn't have any advantage at all. I mean, if we actually look at our sort of experiences on the street in terms of actually having aggravation, she's had far more aggravation than I have. She's not a threat to anybody that's going to be trying to up the ante, you know, trying to be aggressive and stuff. You know, she's not a threat, so she's an easy target. Somebody like me who's a lot bigger, you know, they're not sure, so they're less likely to have a go at me if they don't like, you know, any of the pictures that I'm doing or whatever, for whatever reason. Photographers, particularly some male photographers, they really need to start looking at work and taking the gender out of it, and looking at work and admitting that something is a great photo regardless of who pressed the shutter. It's always an uphill battle when you have this kind of situation where people are blaming other people for good work, in effect. You know, I can't take a picture like that, but that's nothing to do with my talent, it's to do with the fact that I'm a bloke. Now, having said all of this, there is another argument, and that argument is that gender does play a part in how good a photographer is. That's because gender influences your personality. It affects your upbringing, it affects your social groups, it affects your growth as a human being. Now, maybe being a female has helped Sarah gain a certain personality, which then helps her to photograph on the street, and that, you could argue, is, yeah, that's an advantage being a female. But then I'd go right back to Don McCullen and the fact that his upbringing, which is completely different to yours and mine and Sarah's and all the rest of it, has given him those same set of skills. So let me know what you think. Do you think it's easier for female street photographers to take certain types of photographs, you know, particularly these types of photographs on the beaches and so on? Or is it just, like I believe, something that's kind of made up by male photographers who want to make excuses why they can't do things? Now, obviously, I'm talking about street photography in the UK. I am fully aware that other countries, it is illegal for women to be photographed bathing by men. I'm totally aware of that, and that's a completely different conversation altogether. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, and I'd love to hear more from the female photographers that follow this channel. The comments are usually dominated by blokes, and you know, it's really refreshing to hear the girls come through. So if you are a female photographer watching this, let me know what you think in the comments. I'd be really interested to read what you put. Okay, this week's book recommendation. I think it's quite fitting given the discussion that we've been having in this video. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Parr's work, and yet I've been to more of his exhibitions and seen him speak more times than any other photographer. And I don't know why. I guess it's always interesting to listen to Martin. It's certainly always entertaining listening to Martin speak about his work, even if it leaves me scratching my head at times. If you were to ask me to recommend one definitive Parr book, it would have to be this one, The Last Resort. I first came across the images in this book in an exhibition in the Tate in London around 1988, 89, I think it was, to celebrate 100 years of photography. I didn't quite understand what I was looking at. I was 21 years old, in fairness, and couldn't understand what it was about. And it wasn't until I got a lot more experience under my belt that his work started to make sense to me, at least some of the early colour work. Now, I finally got a copy of this in 2015. Actually, it's not my copy, it's Sarah's copy. And in the front, you can see in there, Martin signed it for her, which is really nice. And their paths have crossed a couple of times over the following years. Sarah and Martin were sitting in the speakers lounge at the photography show in Birmingham a few years back, and I remember him asking her as to which was the best agricultural show to go and photograph, and she told him. And then afterwards I said to her, you know, that show you mentioned, that wasn't the best show. And she said, no, she said, but I don't want him turning up when I'm trying to take photographs. So it's really kind of funny. But anyway, her photographs, her agricultural show photographs, are actually in the Martin Parr Foundation library, which is really nice. But anyway, The Last Resort. Now, the original book was printed in 1986 and it was reprinted in 1998. And it's undergone a few revisions in that time, mainly, I believe, in terms of the text. But the edition that we've got is the 4th edition that was printed in 2013. Now, this was all shot in New Brighton, which is a little bit further south from where we are, on the same coast as where we are, but a little bit further south. The Last Resort was pretty groundbreaking at the time. You've got to remember that most documentary photography, most serious photography was being shot in black and white at the time. So for a photographer to come along with high color, fill flash photographs of quite a deprived area of the world at that point was, well, it really was kind of groundbreaking. Now, I'm an 80s child, so the subject matter in here is kind of nostalgic to me now. You know, the haircuts, the way people dressed, you know, what they did on holiday. It's all quite nostalgic, which is quite nice now. But Parr shot all of this with fill flash, and he shot it on medium format film, and it gave the photographs almost a comical look. It made the photographs feel a little bit more unreal, I guess, and I'm assuming that was his intention. And the book itself is great. I mean, this is a really, really great book in terms of street photography and how to do street photography a different way. And of course, his style spawned, you know, hundreds of other photographers with fill flash and trying to do this kind of quirky English seaside type of photography. But what I really wanted to show in context of what we were talking about in the video today is that Martin wasn't afraid of getting really close with a flash and taking photographs of people on beaches. And for me, yeah, it's a different time. It was the 1980s. It's not where we are now, and society has changed somewhat, and people have become a little bit more protective, I guess, over themselves and over their kids and so on. But the point remains, you know, that Martin wasn't afraid to go and take photographs. He wasn't afraid to go and do something different in terms of using flash, something different in terms of using medium format, and something different in the subject matter that he was actually going to take. I think this book is one of the iconic street photography books, whether you like Parr or not. In the same way that Robert Frank's The Americans influenced a whole generation of street photographers in America, I believe that Parr's The Last Resort influenced a whole generation of documentary and street photographers in the UK. And whether you like Parr's work or not, whether you're a fan of Parr's work or not, I think this should be in every photographer's book collection. It's that iconic as far as I'm concerned. It's a great book. You know, as I say, I'm not a huge fan of Parr, but, you know, he knocked it out of the park when he did this one. This is a really great book. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, we'd love to see you subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll try that again. Oh my God. I go into this end bit and I'm just going, it's ridiculous. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, we'd love you. I can't even say it now. Just subscribe. You know, if you like the video, just subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.